Well, last week, a group of asylum seekers camped out on the street outside a hotel in central London. They slept rough for 2 nights and were refusing to stay in their free, taxpayer-funded accommodation because it wasn't nice enough. They were happy with the food, though, which is good, isn't it? And they also said that they have Wi-Fi, which is actually more than I've got at home at the moment. So do these asylum seekers have the right to complain, or should they be grateful for what they've given? Should we go as far as deporting people if they refuse the accommodation that they are given? Joining me now is human rights lawyer Shoaib and also Nile Gardiner, who's the director of the Migrant Centre for Freedom. Niall, thank you very much. I'll start with you. Do you think that we should be deporting people if they refuse perfectly good accommodation?
Well, thanks, Patrick, for having me on the show today. I think it's absolutely outrageous that you have asylum seekers who are complaining about their accommodation. If this kind of accommodation is good enough for British citizens, or is good enough for the military, why on earth are asylum seekers complaining? They should be incredibly grateful for the accommodation they have been offered in the United Kingdom. I think it sends an appalling message when you have asylum seekers protesting about their accommodation here, when many British citizens, of course, live in conditions that are far more cramped and difficult. So I do think there's a fundamental lack of gratitude here. And the reality is, of course, that many of those who are claiming asylum in the United Kingdom shouldn't be in the country in the first place as well. We need to see far tighter border controls in place, and illegal migrants should be definitely deported. And I think that there has to be very careful scrutiny of all of these asylum claims. And clearly, I think many of those claiming asylum should not be in the country in the first place, and those individuals should be deported.
OK. Shoaib, I'll just put it to you that those people who are lounging on the street outside a perfectly serviceable asylum seeker hotel are not actually asylum seekers. They've travelled across 2 continents. They're not particularly happy anywhere they go. If they're not happy here, then we should offer them the chance to return home.
Well, no, of course not. I mean, obviously, we're conflating lots of different issues there. Whether or not they're genuine asylum seekers, whatever that means, is something for the Home Office to decide. I mean, obviously, the Home Office has never been, certainly at the moment isn't, great at doing its job. But obviously, at some point, it falls upon them to actually decide whether or not these people should be allowed to stay in the UK. But now what we're talking about is, while these people are in the UK, should we allow them to be in comfortable hotels, provide them proper, humane accommodation? For instance, it's not just them or, the usual lefty loonies complaining about this, but for instance, I think it was the head of Westminster Council who said firstly they weren't actually consulted when these people were accommodated in hotels there, but the head of the council in fact admitted that it's insufficient, inadequate accommodation. So I think we need to take those concerns seriously. What doesn't look good and what doesn't reflect well on the government is these people on the footpath having to sit on the street because their hotel rooms are not good enough for them to be staying in. Can
I just put to you, Shoaib, something, just literally a cursory look online. It's called the Comfort Inn, and it's got a rating of 4.5 stars out of 5 from the many thousands of people who have stayed in there. And, I mean, I would suggest strongly that this is absolutely fine, and that may I point out as well, very recently elected Labour head of Westminster Council is probably blowing a bit of hot air here. Niall, do you think that we should at the very least, be using these people as PR so that they can video call people waiting in Calais to make the Channel crossing and tell them, don't bother because it's clearly awful here?
Well, I think, it's absolutely outrageous. You have large numbers of young men here complaining about their accommodation, physically fit young men. They've actually crossed the Channel from France, claiming asylum. Why didn't they just stay in France? And why are they in the United Kingdom at all? I mean, this just makes a mockery of the entire asylum system here. And the British government should not be paying £6 million a day to house illegal migrants in the UK. I mean, it's absolutely outrageous. It's an affront to the British taxpayers, an insult, I think, to the British people here. If they don't like their accommodation, well, then go somewhere else. Then go back to France, where they actually came from. And there's no reason why on earth they should be crossing into the UK from France, part of the European Union, they should be returning there if they're not happy, or they should be going back to their countries of origin here. And I do think that the government has to end this practice of paying vast sums of taxpayers' money to fund illegal migrants in the UK. It is just basically this insult, I think, to the British taxpayer, the British people, should not be tolerated.
Look, Shoaib, if the people here feel as though it's against their human rights to stay for free in a hotel in central London with food that is clean and that has Wi-Fi, then would we not be doing them a favour for their human rights to send them on a plane to Rwanda?
No, we wouldn't, because Rwanda is no better. Rwanda is worse. Would we be saying the same thing about Ukrainian asylum seekers? I mean, why are we accommodating
But the
so many
Ukrainian
of them?
asylum seekers aren't kicking off, are they? Because they're fleeing war. Now, that's a really interesting point. Actually, see, that's a really fascinating point, isn't it, actually? Because a lot of the Ukrainian asylum seekers and refugees appear to be very happy because they are fleeing war. And the vast majority of them, Shoaib, are women and children, aren't they? Unlike the fully grown fighting
because we
men
sent flights
who are
to bring them
outside there.
over. Because we brought them over on planes. And everyone's always moaning about and complaining, pointing out the fact that most of the channel crossers and small boats, people crossing small boats, are men. So what, do we actually prefer it to be women and children? Do we want women and children risking their lives?
It would feel...
So, I mean, I just really understand the logic there. Of course it's men.
I'll tell you the logic. I'll explain it to you. I'll explain it to you. People would find it a lot more easy to accept and tolerate women and children coming over because they naturally would appear to be more vulnerable than some of the young men who wander over on a daily basis. It appears more believable that women and children would be in more need of urgent asylum than someone who looks like a 30-year-old bodybuilder.
It might be more believable, but I think it's definitely the right decision these families make. Okay, let the men go over. They settle their lives here, then the children, families
but that's
can come
migration,
here safely.
Shoaib.
When there's a safe way to do so, why did we send planes to Ukraine for women and children when we don't send them anywhere else? How are these people supposed to come here? Like the other person was just saying, so many of these, they cross so many countries, continents to get to the UK. Do we want women and children doing that? How can women and children do that? And I think that's just really an appalling thing to suggest. You can't be genuine asylum seeker if you didn't bring your 2-year-old toddler with you.
If I could just respond here, but there's a huge difference between women and children fleeing from Ukraine, from a war zone, and they are extremely grateful, I think, to be in the United Kingdom. Huge difference between these women and children and these healthy young men, so-called asylum seekers, who are now complaining about their accommodation at the Premier Inn in London. There's a vast difference here. And I think that it's this should be clearly acknowledged by all sides here. And these protests by asylum seekers who've come from France, after all, this is just absolutely unacceptable. It shows tremendous lack of gratitude to the British people.